Here's a random quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, which Configurations of Self reminds me of. He's like an essayist, poet, spiritual writer guy from the 19th century. A lot of what he says, I think, is quite in line with the person-centered approach. I'm not sure if Rogers ever mentions Emerson, but he probably liked him, I think. I like him to the extent that I understand him. He's quite a difficult writer to fully follow all the time, partly because he's writing nearly 200 years ago, and partly because he writes in a really esoteric, quite personal kind of way. But to the extent that I do understand him, I actually really enjoy a lot of what he says, and I go back to Self-Reliance sometimes to have a go at it again and see how it lands with me every, I don't know, year or two. This quote, though, it's one of his famous ones, I think. The first sentence, anyway. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. With consistency, a great soul has simply nothing to do. He may as well concern himself with his shadow on the wall. And a lot of the essay really is about Ralph Waldo Emerson talking about we need to listen to ourselves and what's going on inside of ourselves and not try and force it into this uniformity of thought and feeling. We need to just allow us to feel what we're feeling, and maybe if we can maintain contact with all the things that we're feeling, we can begin to rely on ourselves to navigate our lives and go about things in a way that we find meaningful. And that's very much in line with the person-centered approach. With all that in mind, then, this exercise, I suppose the aim is to get you to become aware of the different configurations that you have. I'm not going to suggest specific configurations that you need to think of, because I think you know better than I do, certainly, which areas of your life you feel like you're behaving in a different way to other areas. See if you can, outline the different areas or the different configurations that you've spotted and the ways in which you feel you can relate to this concept. And then have a think and write about the differentities, the similarities and the differences between these different areas. This can be quite uncomfortable, I think, because we often like to feel as though we have a consistent sense of self, and highlighting inconsistencies and differences and things like that and contradictions can be quite uncomfortable. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. Only do it to the extent that you're okay, keep yourself safe. But I think through doing this, you may well become aware of how you can take on certain different sub-personalities depending on context. And like with anything, I suppose, the more you're aware of these things happening, the better you're able to navigate it in a way that suits you. I think one thing I've noticed over the last, 5-10 years is, I guess, an increased integration between all the different areas of my life. I feel like a more similar person, whether I'm at work, whether I am with my partner, whether I'm with my friends, whether I'm with whoever, really. There's more of a consistency, I think, than there used to be. I seem to remember when I was a teenager, when I was in my early 20s, I felt like a very different person in different contexts. And I remember certain times when people from different areas of my life would come together, and I feel really quite uncomfortable because, I don't know, to some extent I was adapting to the people around me in different contexts. And there was a analogy someone once mentioned about a chameleon being on a tartan rug and not knowing what colour to change. And I think there was a bit of that. There was a bit of me adapting to whoever I was around a little bit, and me being quite different in different contexts, and then when things come together, me really not having a clue how to place myself. And I think as time's gone on, I'm just more of myself in different circumstances, I think. And I guess a part of that has become due to being aware of how different I was in different contexts previously. I don't know, I'm not really sure. See what you get out of it anyway.